live!
Yay!
Welcome anyone who is watching live with us, or if you're watching live in the future.
But then it won't be live.
Yes, then it won't be live. That will be in the future, not live.
Then it will be like watching TV.
Yeah, exactly. They watching
Pre-recorded TV.
Yeah.
Indeed.
Thank you so much for tuning in. This is the first episode of Theatre Talks, which is what we are now doing for the foreseeable future in lockdown. And it's just something we want to do so that we can keep talking about theatre, keep sharing tips and tricks and experiences, and just keep in contact and in communication with everybody. So we have been given some questions, and people have been sending in some questions on social media, which we're going to be answering. But you can ask us your questions too in the live chat. Like this.
Yay!
So quickly, I know that I think have our names at the bottom of our pictures, but does everyone want to quickly just run around and say who they are? Because some people might not know
us.
Hands up, very polite.
We didn't rehearse this. Debbie. You didn't tell us who would be going first.
You're theatre people, improvise.
So,
Right.
I nominate Steph, who is above me in this direction.
Thank you, Jenny. So I've been introduced by Jenny. I'm Steph. I'm the production at Shine Like Stars and a performer without a boat. So hello.
Hello, Steph. Everyone say heads. Oh, Mandy is volunteering me, I think, now with her gesture towards my end of the camera. So, hello. I am Jen, or Jenny, or Jennifer, if you really don't like me. And
I tend to call you Jen, Jenny, Jen.
On occasion, you have been noticing. And I am co-musical director with someone else in here who I'm sure will introduce themselves as such shortly. And I'm also known as the ASAS director, which, as previously mentioned in one of our other videos, isn't as bad as it sounds. It's just a shortened form of assistant to the assistant director, who is not here. But our regular director is. She's up there.
I think if you're tuning in, then you probably know who I am.
Well, you never know.
Yeah. I'm the director of All the Madness here at Shine Like Stars. I'm the director of Out of the Boat Theatre Productions, and I'm a freelance theatre artist. And I'm going to nominate Mandy, who's down below, to share her life story.
Thank you. My name Mandy. I am assistant director sometimes, not most of the time, but sometimes. Production assistant dominantly, though. Co-musical director with Jennifer here.
Oh, you did a thing. I said the only people who don't like me call me Jennifer, and then you called me Jennifer. That's mean.
I love you, really. I'm just playing with you. We're all about love here at Shine Like Stars. I also do for most of the photography for the social media channels. Yay. So that's me. That's you.
That's who are going to be here with you today. We also have Vicky and Steve joining us on Friday. I'm going to be talking to them about script writing. Today, our subject is character building. We're going to teach you how to become a better person.
Wrong type of character building.
We're going to teach you how to build characters. First off, I feel like I should explain that the whole idea of Theatre Talks kind of came about because we did a live Q&A last week. Was it last week?
Week before last, I think.
2 weeks, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, it feels like it was way longer than that. But we did a video, and we just did like a random Q&A session to be able to chat with you guys, and it was really fun and really enjoyable. And then the next day, YouTube was giving me issues, and I couldn't seem to like put it in the right folder, and I accidentally tweeted it.
I'm just like playing my sad violin.
Yeah. Tiny violin.
Exists, but thankfully these ones will all be shared, so that is good.
Yay.
So we're gonna jump straight into some questions. And hi Dan. Dan is in the comments saying hello.
Hi, Daniel.
Hi, Dad.
Good to have you joining us. Well, I tell you what, start off with the first question, which is kind of just to get us all started on the subject, and that is, what aspect of a character do you first create? And feel free to answer this in the comments as well, because we'd love to hear stuff from you guys too. So
That would be cool.
what aspect of the character do you guys create first?
If I could jump in, because I've the first thing I think about with a character is their motivation. So it can be extremely simple, such as I really want to have a sandwich, and you know, and it's as simple as that, and you can make something. You know, you can make an entire play about that. One Man, Two Governors, for instance. But yeah, I'd say motivation is like one of the key aspects to when you're creating a character. Simple as a sandwich, and complicated as I want to find vengeance for the one who killed my loved one. That would be Hamlet. So yeah. It can be as simple as that. Okay. Simple answer.
Guys, for those of you not checking Facebook, Vicky says we're doing great.
Yes,
Oh,
I got it.
Thanks,
Shout out to
Vicky.
Vicky.
That's a
And
plan.
what's the first aspect of the character that you create?
Simply because of the way that our sessions tend to work, for me it's the voice, because one of the very first things we do is the script read. So if I have a little bit of history about the character already and I kind of know where the script is going, the first thing that I tend to focus on is their voice. And by that I don't mean like, oh, I'll put on some sort of funny accent or make them sound really snooty, because all of those things I think personally should come later, because if you're focusing far too much on those things, you risk becoming a stereotype and not actually putting any thought and work into the character itself. When I say I put more effort into the voice, kind of like Mandy, I think, how would they say this? Why would they be feeling this way? What would they be feeling exactly? Why would they say this line? And how are they going to say it? So when I say I focus on the voice, that's what I mean. The intonation, the cadence, and the emotions and feelings and motivations behind that particular voice, and then the movement and things like that for me come later. It's always the voice that I focus on first, and that just because I'm doing that thing first doesn't mean it won't change later. It's just one of the first things I focus on, because I think in theatre how you're saying things, and obviously like projecting in theatre is very important. Voice is one of your most useful tools in theatre. And if you can't couple that with your facial expressions and your body expressions, then you ain't gonna carry your lines.
That's true.
So yeah, voice for me.
Oh, sorry. We've got a comment that somebody says the video is frozen.
I did see that.
I have checked it on a separate device, and it's fine for me.
Actually,
So
I a separate laptop, so it should be fine.
yes.
I think it might be just you. I shall reply to you now. Steph, what aspect do you first create? I'm curious. I'm different to both Mandy and Jenny, so I'm curious.
Variation of answers. It's good. It's good. It's good.
Yes.
I find that really difficult because the question says create, so it implies that you're getting to put your own kind of stamp on the character. So like, for instance, when I either audition or I'm given a role in a play and you're playing this specific character, there's a lot of detail already worked out about the character for you, but you usually do get to create, like kind of as Jenny touched on about like the voice, would be the first thing for her, and kind of it's a way of trying to embody that character. So for me, I would agree with Jenny in that like voice, overall physicality, body movements, mannerisms all kind of come into play. Anything that can kind of leave Steph over here and take this character on and make things different. If the character is different, maybe the character is very like me. It's not happened yet, but that kind of thing can just help me put myself to one side and take on this new persona. But also, like exactly like what Mandy said about the motivation, you want to know why your character's doing the things that they're scripted to do. So like it has to make sense to you, because if it doesn't make sense to you, it's not going to make sense to the audience when you get out and you act it in front of your live audience on stage or for TV or film or whatever. So anything that just goes towards helping you believe what you are saying and what you are doing will help your audience believe it too. But it's a funny one because I think it does depend on how much of the character is pre-written for you. So I own a character hire company for, kids entertainment. Those characters are iconic characters. So there's very little you can do yourself. You really are bringing a well-known character to life. So like everything, you really are embodying a character that has everything penned for you already. Whereas when you're doing a play and you're given a character and you're given the basics about this character, you're probably not going to be, it depends on how much goes into the script, I guess, what the play is about, but you're usually not given information about the character's childhood. What were they like as a child? Why did they do those things as a child? Does that have a pattern to how they are now as an adult? Or, it depends how far back you want to go. But I think the more you embody this character, the more you will find yourself thinking about these things. And the more you think about these things and the more you actually act out these things, the more believable the whole performance becomes anyway. So the word create is just kind of interesting to me, like how much are you creating and how much is given to you and said, do this. It says so in the script. So, I don't know if that answers the question, but that's what goes through my mind.
No, that's it, because again, so like I feel like I do resonate with that, in that if I'm given a character, you're obviously going to base it off something, especially if it's a character that you're familiar with. But the first thing I always do is create my stance, because to me, my body will tell me everything else about the character. So like my very first thing when approaching a character is to figure out if they were stood in a room at like a gathering or a party or whatever it is, and somebody was just to take a photo of them without their knowledge, what would they look like? Because in my head, what I need to see is literally a snapshot of what does this person look like when they think no one is looking. Because that's what they're going to be like when they're in front of an audience and they're not, involved in a scene as such. If they're not directly, if they're just in the background, then that has to tell you so much, because you're seeing them at a moment when they think they're fine. So if I instinctively start to stand with my shoulders hunched and I'm feeling kind of protective of myself and like I'm on edge or like I'm ready to run or something, that's going to tell me so much about how my voice is then going to come, because my voice might come out very fast because I'm trying to get information across quickly, or I might end up being very slow and very measured based off that because I'm wanting to keep people at a distance. But yeah, anything else always comes from my body. My body's the first thing I always think of in terms of how do I stand, and then from there, how do I sit and how do I walk? And yeah, the very first thing is just what do I look like when nobody, I think, is watching me.
If I can like carry on with that, I think it is actually really true. The aspect of you need to know how you look, even if you're not being center of attention. You're on a stage. Everyone can see you, and they're going to see you if you stand out by looking normal. If you look like, oh, I'm just standing, I'm just chilling, I don't need to put my 100% on right now because I'm not giving a monologue. Which is absolutely the opposite. You need to stance it up, get that body language going, and then it's going to be helpful towards your fellow actors who are also on stage.
Well, interesting that you say that, because the first time I ever worked with Jenny,
I was wondering if this would come up.
Jenny, the first time I ever realized how good of an actress Jenny was that we were doing The Princess Bride. It was our first show ever with Shine Like Stars, and Jenny was playing a guard in a scene. And I think you had like a line that you had to deliver at the beginning and the end of the scene. So you just stood like in a corner while this argument was going on, and it was like really intense argument. It was really like so captivating to watch. And the whole time in rehearsal that I was watching this, I was just watching Jenny. Stood there watching this argument going on. I was like, oh, this is amazing. Jenny's reactions are so good. Like, it wasn't comedic, it wasn't anything else. It was just, felt like I get so much more from the argument by watching how Jenny reacted to it. And I remember saying to our actors afterwards who were having the argument, like, you're going to have to up your game because I'm watching the guard.
That's a very good point.
when you were talking about body as well, Debbie, like that in I very nearly actually said as my answer stage presence, because like as you just mentioned, I adore background acting. I think it is so fun to just like, I don't understand actors who can just stand back, like the world, like the scenes aren't happening around them. I have so much fun interacting with the scene just silently by myself with my face and my body just reacting to what's happening, just wondering if any of the audience are watching me. And I just have so much fun with that. I think it's very entertaining, even just for me personally, to just be stood back, just observing the scene, but staying in character the whole time. I love that.
And that's what you have to do, because I mean, it's that old thing of when you're on a stage, it doesn't matter whether or not you're directly involved in the scene. You're still on a stage.
Exactly.
You've got to keep acting. Dan has asked, the costume has always helped me so much. Hook, for example, became so much easier to portray when I had the long coat and sword. It helped me realize where he fit into the narrative world. Yeah, costume. How do you guys find costume? Do you find costume makes a big difference to your character?
Oh yeah.
I will find any excuse to wear, like, you know, any beautiful costume, from like silly outfits to like nice things. I think it helps so much, and it makes you have more fun just as a person.
Yeah.
I think when we did the play Christmas Carol, and the actor who played Scrooge, he pretty much always rehearsed with his top hat, his walking cloak. And I mean, I'm fairly sure he had a lot of fun swishing that around.
Oh yeah, big time.
It helped with his walk, and like that weight was able to droop his shoulders forwards to add to that old man stance that Scrooge has. So yeah, I think having costume really benefits you as an actor.
Yeah.
If we could rehearse sooner, like it doesn't always happen because you need to prep costumes and stuff, but if you could like always rehearse in costume, that would be pretty cool. Similar if you could always rehearse like on the actual set you're going to perform on, like that would be so good, but like that's just not practical. But still,
sadly.
When I did,
if we were loaded,
perhaps. When I did the Tempest years ago, we built a massive set for it, and it was in what I'm calling like old upstage theatre, like the John Cooper Theatre, 41 Monkey. But this was back when it was upstage, and it had like just one balcony at the top, and we basically built a stage that just ran from the balcony to the ground. And we had rehearsed in it for like 3 days before we built this. And then I was like told just, oh yeah, Prospero's area is up there. So you're going to have to do your monologues, like climbing this set to get to the balcony. It was so much fun, but it took me like an entire day just to get used to like, delivering a monologue and at the same time climbing a set piece to get to a balcony. Next question that we have is, how important is, oh no, that's the wrong one. I think that's one of the random questions for the end. How important is your voice? Do you have to know a lot of accents?
Jenny kind of touched on this, didn't she? So I
yeah,
imagine,
if I could jump in once again, I would say the first, just a very simple answers to the first and second question: yes, no, and I'll tell you why. Your voice, well, how important? I guess I can't answer that with a yes, but it is very important. Because as I, like Mandy said before, as I touched on earlier, your voice in a theatrical setting, not only does it have to carry and reach your back row of audience, the volume and projection and clarity is the very first thing you should learn, I would say, in terms of voice working and acting on stage. But not only do all those things have to check off the boxes, you have to be able to, at that volume and with that clarity, project your character's emotions, thoughts, feelings, motivations, and all of this needs to come across to your audience. And of course you use things like your facial expressions and your body, your actions to convey that as well. But a lot of the subtleties are in the voice as well. And I think, for me personally, I think my voice is my most useful tool. And that's not to say I don't put everything into my body actions and facial expressions as well, because 100% I do. It's just that for me personally, I have quite a long history of like really enjoying voice acting, and I've been on theatre since I was young and always known how to project my voice because of that. And yeah, I mean, it's the easiest thing to say is if you can't be heard by your audience, then you're fighting a losing battle from the get-go. You need to be able to do that. The reason I say no to the second half of this question is I think for a lot of actors, and I think obviously young actors are more likely to fall into this trap, especially if you focus on the accent of your character before anything else. As I said before, you run the risk of falling into a stereotype, and the only thing you'll be focusing on is that accent, unless it's something that you've practiced a lot in your own time, perhaps before leading up to a performance, before you even knew you were going to do this accent, and one you feel comfortable using. I would say sure, go for it. If you're playing like a very small role with one-off comedy lines, sure, accents could be really useful for helping delivering those comedic lines for effect. However, if it's something you've got to maintain over an entire performance, I would strongly suggest just staying away from it, because you'll find yourself focusing far too much on the accent, and you're going to lose, as Mandy was saying earlier, you're going to lose your thoughts about the motivations, the thoughts and the feelings. If all you're thinking about is maintaining this accent, that you're going to find yourself falling into a trap where none of the other things that you want to convey through your voice will be conveyed, because you're using up too much of your effort on trying to maintain the accent. I would only ever suggest using an accent if it's one, as I've said before, you've practiced in your own time and you feel comfortable with, or if you're using it on like a comedic character who's in maybe just a few scenes, or one that is literally just for comedic effect. That would be my recommendation personally.
There's also, I think people can kind of fall into the trap of thinking that when somebody says develop like the voice of your character, that people can mean accent.
Yeah, no, not at all.
Yeah, and I would always say to students, especially if you're playing more than one character in a play, that you want the characters to sound different, but that doesn't mean one of them Scottish.
Yes.
You don't have to do that. Just changing the tone of your voice. So like making it slower and making it deeper, and then making the next one really crazy and really up here and really fast, and that itself is creating two different voices for your character. And it's already starting to create like a personality for two characters. But yeah, I think too easily people can fall into that trap of going, oh, I suddenly need to become African or something and develop an accent. And not at all. Voice work is important, but it's important to create a voice that you can maintain. Steph, I'm curious because Steph, running your character hire company, you have to take on characters, and some characters have specific accents, like American and Scottish, actually.
I don't do the Scottish accents at all, really, so I wouldn't be suited to that character. But on what Jenny said about, certainly the voice, I don't want to say defining the character, but it's a huge, so you bring somebody that you know very well, your mum, your friend, whoever, they will recognize you because of your voice. Your voice is a massive thing about you as a person. So it's the same when you embody a character. The voice plays a huge part. And exactly as Jenny said, it doesn't mean necessarily that you have to take on an accent. If the script says this is a Scottish person and you're not Scottish, then yeah, okay, we're probably looking for someone who can do a really good Scottish accent, or or whatever. But voice does not equal taking on a different accent necessarily. It can just mean you kind of put it, Debbie, in better words, about finding that kind of the tone in your voice. How does this person talk? I'm Irish and I talk very fast. So I've been told. I purposely try to slow down, maybe unsuccessfully, but I'm trying to slow down massively so with whatever type of voice I take on for character work, just to be more understood, I suppose, living and working in the UK. And I can think of one example of really changing a voice and an accent, I suppose, but certainly changing my voice, doing a role for you, Debbie, in Hook, which was an awesome play to do. So, I got to play Mr. Smee, and I said, I'm not going to get on stage and talk like I talk, because I just don't see it as fitting the type of character that Mr. Smee is. So I talked to Debbie in advance and I said, I love Mr. Smee, I love this production. Can I try and channel Bob Hoskins? And Debbie just kind of went,
I genuinely you were joking. That first rehearsal, I just kind of sat and stared at you going, oh, you were serious?
Oh, I was serious. I was not kidding. I absolutely loved the late great Bob Hoskins, and I loved he just had such a great voice. He had just such a memorable, iconic voice, and I thought, I'm probably going to be living on lozenges for the whole 3 months of rehearsals and show, which I kind of was, and my voice was pretty much gone afterwards, but I felt it was so worth it to have just one chance. I was like, this is never going to happen again, because other people will just be like, what are you doing? Please stop. But I thought I'll only do it if I can kind of do it right. As much as a little Irish person can do Bob Hoskins' voice. But I loved it. But I think it was like you said, that first rehearsal, nobody expected it. And I think my first line was, "Good morning, Neverland!" And they all went, well, she was serious. What? And that was loads of fun. But the reason I felt it was so important to do such a drastically different voice to my own was because I also had a second character, much more minor character, a lot less stage time than Mr. Smee, but it was Toodles, who very, very different character, and the voice had to be so different too. So that voice was much more kind of like my own, but just with that kind of, I'm kind of a little bit mad at the best of times, but even more kind of brought the madness out more in Toodles' voice. He was all, I can't remember any of his lines, but my marbles, I've lost my marbles. It was all just insanity coming out in the poor man, bless him. But it was so much fun to have this, more minor character and do something very, very different than the bigger character that I had, and to really make that boom when I was on stage. It was so much fun, even if my voice kind of paid a price at the end of it. It was still really fun.
We've been asked other characters you struggled to take on.
Mr. Smee.
I have to think about this one.
Yeah.
I can think of one in particular. So this is really hard to say actually in a Q&A. Okay, anyone who has watched any kind of videos about people who work for Disneyland and know about character integrity will understand my next turn of phrase. But I have hung out with Ariel before from The Little Mermaid. And I find Ariel very difficult. Hard to talk about without character integrity coming into play. But yeah, Ariel's a character that I really struggle to resonate with. So anytime I have to hang out with her, I find it frustrating. Because I like...
She's a really difficult voice, though.
What?
She's a really difficult voice. Everything is... I have quite a deep voice for...
not her voice. I mean, everything. I like connecting with characters, even if, they're total opposites of me. There's usually something that I kind of find to resonate and go, okay, well, I get that. And Ariel is one of those characters that I just get annoyed and frustrated with. Hanging out with her is difficult at the best of times. Also, she has so many siblings. And they all start with A, and remembering them is really frustrates me. Anyone else? Characters you struggled with?
Well, I was only just going to say, I agree with you wholeheartedly, because I hung out with Ariel very recently. And yes, the whole, it still was flying around, and I was like, I have no idea what I'm doing, and this is really hard. Why have I assigned myself to this? So I empathize and I agree wholeheartedly.
Oh, Dan has said the character I played in Shadow of a Doubt because originally I didn't see myself as that character at all.
Who's that character?
Uncle Charlie. But actually, Dan, I will say I do remember when I cast you as that, I think I had to take you aside and be like, look, you're perfect for this.
Aww.
Because you were so fitting for that, and you did it so well.
You did do it very well. After having a bit of thought, I think the characters, I think for me it would be characters that at surface level would seem to be quite generic. So if there's any character that just seems to be there for like plot convenience or no particular reason, or is just kind of a I'm here character, I feel like basically the less building blocks you have to go on, the more I struggle, because then I worry from an actor's point of view, like I've not been like, this character doesn't seem to have a lot to them. Am I playing this the way the director wants me to? I want to put my own personal twists and things into this because of, you know, the small amount I have to build from. You have to put your own work into it to make it a believable character. So for me, the struggle there is the director okay with the things that I'm putting into this character? Because I don't know what they want from this character. But I've never been told off for it so far. And to be fair, this is probably going back to like my other production company more than it is with Shine Like Stars, because I can't actually think of a specific example of a character that's just generic that I've been given from Debbie. I don't think Debbie really hands out generic characters, I'll be honest.
So I'm pretty, as a director, I like to think that I will give the cast kind of like enough to go on that they can do it themselves and go, this is what I want to make of it, but they don't go too crazy with it because they've got a like you said, like a building.
I prefer to have
juggling as the guard. I see my character as a juggler. He was too generic.
I've become the court jester.
Are you okay?
For me, I think like the happiest medium is having enough building blocks that you have a solid foundation, but not so many that you feel like you can't put your own personal twists and thoughts into the character that you're given. I want to be able to take the character somewhere, unless of course you're doing something where you're giving like a very specific character and you have to play it exactly this way. There are certain situations that call for that, and that's fine. But on stage, in performances, in theatre, I prefer to be able to put my own, like, I think most actors prefer to be able to put their own personal like ideas into a character. I mean, that's, I would assume that's the majority, but I know there are probably others who would prefer to just be handed the character on a silver platter and say, play this, okay, I will do that. But yeah, I think that's what I would struggle with the most, just not having a foundation.
I'm curious about this now. It's actually because I've just thought of a situation that I ended up in, which I'll tell you guys about in a minute. So my question for you out of this situation is, have you guys ever had a moment when like you've nearly broken character, or like you've kind of come close and you've had to kind of pull back into the character?
Yes, I would like to jump in on this one. So it wasn't with Shine Like Stars, but it was during secondary school, and it was my last sixth form college rather, but secondary school and college, same thing. And it was my last performance, and I played the character Nurse in Romeo and Juliet.
You were great in that. I saw it.
I loved that role so much. She was just a comical character, but she had her moments of like tenderness towards Juliet, and I was just like, wow, I love it. And what happened one evening is that my hair is styled, so it was a big messy bun, all clipped in, and Juliet, on her costume, she wears little buttons. And there's a moment where I'm sitting down and she just gives me a nice little hug from behind. And what happened is that my little messy bun got caught in her buttons. And I just could not help but laugh. And this is in front of maybe 100 or so more people. My hair is caught in her jacket and I could not help but laugh. And of course that's breaking character, because it's like laughing at the situation rather than laughing necessarily in character. And I tried to play it off. I tried to be a little bit funny about it, but I don't know if anyone heard my little improv through my laughter. So yeah, that was definitely a moment where I broke character. I feel like that was only half the question. I can't actually remember. I just wanted to tell you that story because I love
Well, I had a moment where I realized how much like my training kind of snaps me into things. Because nowadays when I act, I very rarely do like stage shows. I tend to do more improvised shows, or I tend to do character shows where I'm like on a site and site specific. And I was doing a performance, it was over Easter for 2 weeks, of like the world of Beatrix Potter. About 3 years ago maybe. And I was playing the Toad, what's his name? Jeremy Fisher. So
Yeah.
Jeremy Fisher. And I developed like the whole character from it. I only found out like 3 days beforehand. You were kind of hired, it was like a seasonal thing, and you were hired to be a character, but you'd find out like 3 days before we started what character you were. And I was Jeremy Fisher, and I had this like walk that I developed where like, because I had a punch, I had my hands like this all the time, and I was kind of like always stood with a bend. And I loved it. And I like, because I always start with the stance, as I was saying earlier. Once I kind of had created that, I was able to get the voice because he was an old British man, and I knew all this stance and stuff. And he was so much fun to play. But unfortunately, when we started on the first day, it had been raining, like really badly, flooding, and the whole event was outdoors. It was in this like mile-long park walk, and the characters were all like spaced out so that like as people came through, they would meet everybody on their journey. And it was like a mudslide. Like the whole place was just awful, and the paths were like big pebble paths, so like everyone was just sticking to the path to walk down. And it was the beginning of the day, and I was walking to my place, and there was a couple coming through, and they were the first people of the day, and I was trying to be good by like walking up the kind of mud slope to get around them, and basically everything went wrong. And I came up the mud slope, I said good morning to them as Jeremy Fisher, proceeded to fall, windmilled my arms, but my training kicked in, and I landed like back in my place. The problem was that, of course, Jeremy Fisher was such a dramatic character that essentially what they saw was me going, "Good day." And honestly, like, it was terrible, but like I remember the woman like leapt away from me, and like all my efforts were in vain because she leapt onto the mud as well to get away from me. And I remember the guy just being like, "Are you okay?" Yeah, slippery. But but I remember afterwards just thinking, "Oh, thank goodness for training." Like I came back to myself and found my place. But yeah, my first day on the job, and I screamed in the faces of the first people I saw. Terrible. We have. Is there a portrayal of a character in a play you've been a part of that has surprised you?
Ooh, very, very interesting question.
So, I'm trying to glean exactly what this question means. Does this mean like other people's portrayals of characters, or like have we been surprised by our own portrayals that we didn't see coming?
I think you can take it either way.
Huh.
I've got one that kind of works with this. It's weird because I was thinking about this question earlier on today, and so we did A Christmas Carol at the end of 2019, but we had previously done it in 2017, and a lot of the actors had like come from the original production into the next production, and we had a group of new actors, and so some people were reprising roles, and some people were taking on new roles, and people were trading roles, and there was a particular scene that I thought just it was the most different than it had been in the first play, and it kind of fell into that. Is there a portrayal of a character that surprised you? And it was the Cratchit family scene. And in both versions, the actors were superb and the scenes were lovely. But the weirdest thing was that like the first time we did it, it was a beautiful scene, and it went really well, and it was lovely, and it was sweet. And then the second time we did it, it was like the actors just clicked slightly more with each other. And like, again, they were both beautiful, but with the second time we did it, the actors, and what was interesting was like some of them were the same as they'd been. Shona had played like Mrs. Cratchit the first time and then played Tiny Tim the second time, so she was changing her role within the family. There was new people coming in, and I remember just watching that scene and going, "Oh my gosh, I feel like they're just giving me a hug." Like they
Oh.
well, and they do this song, and part of the song I had them playing tag in the song, or tig as the English say. Irish would say tag, I don't know why. Tag. They're playing a chasing game. And I even remember when I said to them during the choreography, like, we're gonna play tag, and you're gonna tap, and you're gonna go under a table, and then I was like, oh, they're singing at the same time. Why have I got them doing this? And not only did they do it, but they made it look like this is the kind of thing they would do every day. And this is the kind of thing that, like, they're so used to each other that they play games all the time, and there was such love and warmth, and it became one of my favorite scenes in the whole play. And again, like that, there was nothing wrong with the scene the first time. It was beautiful, and the actors the first time did it lovingly. And the second time, it was almost as though, because it was a different group of actors, that they just clicked more. And it was just really interesting. And I that is something that happens, is that like certain actors can work better together than others. I found that over the years, like there's certain actors who being on stage with is perfect and it's fine, there's nothing wrong, and then there's another actor that I just think, oh my gosh, I can bounce off you so much more, like my brain when I'm with you. And yeah, so really kind of, I know it's not kind of quite in with that question, but like it did surprise me that just seeing other people portraying the characters and seeing people changing roles and other people stepping into the roles and how that changed other actors, I was like, oh, this is amazing. I never failed to learn as a director just from watching different things.
I've got one.
Yeah, go for it then.
You having said that, Debbie, is kind of like triggered my memory. But we did The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe a few Christmases ago, and I was originally supposed to be part of that play, but unfortunately was not very well at the time of the performance. And I was supposed to play a character called Morgrim, I believe.
Yeah, Morgrim.
Yeah, who was like the wolf, like command of the White Witch's army. And poor Dan, not Dan Shipley, other Dan, had to step into the role last minute on account of my not being particularly well. And I was fortunately able to go and see the performance. I just remember feeling so terrible at the time, like, I can't believe I dropped out last minute. That's like really irresponsible and horrible of me. I can't believe I've done this to everyone. I feel terrible. But then I actually went to see the performance, and like watching Dan in the role of Morgrim, I could not take my eyes off him. And I just remember being sat there thinking, wow, you know, I'm now almost kind of glad that I'm not in this, because Dan, like, he put his everything into that character. And there was a moment where, like, he had to fight Isaac, who was playing Peter, ? Yeah. And sorry, it's been a while, I'm trying to remember who was what. Yeah, and he had to fight Peter, and like unscripted, like he just like reared himself back and just let out a really loud howl before the battle started. And then the whole scene was really high energy, and Dan put his everything into his voice and his movement. And the whole time I was just thinking, like, Dan should have been Morgrim from the start. This is perfect casting. I was so happy that he took on the role with like such vigor. He was excellent. So I was like really pleasantly surprised to see like how well he was able to just roll with that, especially considering, you know, because he had to, bless him, pick up like the choreography for that fight scene as well. So not only did he have to take on an entirely new character and learn those lines, he had to pick up the choreography. And not only did he was able to do all that, he was able to do it to such a degree that I felt like, wow, he's like, this kid's better than me. Like, let him keep the role. He was amazing.
That was a good play. I liked that one. Have we lost Wendy? Oh, you're back. Your screen went dark.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah.
I think we've got time for like one more question, and then we've got a few quick ones that people ask for the random section. But the question is, do you use method acting to get into character? So I should just say, for anyone who doesn't know the term, so method acting is kind of like when you take the character not just in the scene, but take them kind of out of it. So becoming the character during all process of the rehearsals, or like behind the scenes of the camera and stuff. Does anyone use method acting? I don't.
I've done it once.
Yeah.
It was, I don't know if you remember, it was on Steve's request, I believe. for director's cut. So Mandy, I don't know if you remember, but we both had to do this.
Oh yes, it was kind of, yeah, it was asked on us, wasn't it?
Yeah, for rehearsals. I can't remember if we had to do it every rehearsal, but I just remember early on Steve asked us to do method acting, and it's not a technique that I employ myself now, but I do remember enjoying it at the time because I find it quite fun taking on a character. So being able to, and I love improvisation. Like anyone who knows me well as an actor knows I love improvising, and method acting during rehearsals was fun for me simply because I got to take my character beyond the lines that were scripted and have fun playing around as that character. I like improv, so getting to stay in character while moving around during rehearsals was very, very fun for me. But I wouldn't ever be the kind of person to take it to the extreme and then like take that character home with me and then stay in character throughout all walks of life. Honestly, I know there are some people who do this, but I personally feel like that's kind of irresponsible because the people you see outside of your working life shouldn't be subjected to you becoming a different person around them. I don't think that's a kind thing to do, and especially if you're playing like a horrible person. But secondly, I feel the good actor should be able to switch on and off between their characters and not need to take their characters home with them. But that's just my personal feeling on it. I know people will have arguments to the contrary, but that's I'll step aside to let someone else continue.
Yeah, I've never tried method acting apart from that one time for director's cut years ago. I would almost feel a bit kind of not necessarily shy, but because you have to improvise lines, and I feel like that's a challenge within itself. Like, fair enough having the having the mindset of that character and keeping that, but also just trying to speak as them, because you might not be a natural at, say, just improvising or being creative enough to write on the spot. So I don't think I would touch it, to be honest. But also, there are the couple of stories from famous actors. Like, obviously, Daniel Day-Lewis is one of the most famous method actors. But then also, I forget his name, but the man who played Joker
Jared
in
Leto?
Heath Ledger.
Is that right? No,
yeah.
Not Keith Ledger.
No,
Wait,
Jared Leto.
Jared Leto. Jared Leto is the one who did the horrible things while method acting. If that's what we're talking about.
That's what I'm talking about. And so it's just kind of like, I know, just as you said, Jenny, it's not necessarily fair on others to put them in that situation. Like, it's like, am I meant to play along with this? Am I meant to just act as normal? So it's like a matter of who you are, who's around you. Should you take it home, keep it in your professional company? So, but no, I don't use method acting. That's me.
For me, it very much depends on who the character is, because exactly as you both pointed out that, Heath Ledger, God rest him, took on the role of Joker, and it, had a terrible effect on him, and I can't remember how many years he's dead, but you hear stories like that more often than you'd like to, and I think the character you're portraying, to take on the method, could be very dangerous, to be honest. If you're playing a disturbed, damaged type person, and particularly if it's a dysfunctional person who's not looking for redemption in themselves, that is what I wouldn't take that on outside of my lines. The script, because I'm a mum with a husband and 2 kids at home, so I would not.
Yes, don't want to bring that
my home. But on the other hand, I recently, because we're all in lockdown, gone back to writing. I used to write an awful lot more back, like 8, 9, 10 years ago. And when I'd be writing the characters, I would play them through in my head, particularly whichever one I was kind of like my baby. This, I really want to know everything. And I think going back to one of the first questions we had in the live today is about kind of what are the first things you create, I think is what the question said, but it got us talking about kind of embodying the character from the voice and the manners into the physicality. Debbie talked about taking on the stance and so on. Like, I will find myself doing that when I'm writing, not just when I'm actually sat there with pen to paper or on my laptop, to be more accurate, but like, I'll be making a cup of tea in my kitchen and I've taken on the stance. I'm thinking about things as though I was in the mind of the character, if that makes sense. And it's, for me, it's all part of the character development. It's part of trying to get into that mindset, like, you know, where are the words coming from the page? What would be believable for this? You know, it's all a part of that. So, I mean, I suppose in a sense that's still a bit like method acting. You know, that I'm playing this out, like, because I've had it said to me, like, my husband once was like, why are you stood like that? And in my head, I had this whole different world around me, you know, while I was like, there making my cup of tea or something. So there's that element that I still do very much. When it comes to picking up a script and stuff, I'm always kind of laughing and joking and trying to keep, you know, upbeat and stuff with things. So I suppose I'm easier at switching on and off for, you know, we need to go. I mean, poor Vicky, she's not here to comment on it, but I'm sure I've driven her completely insane when we've acted together, because whenever she's gone on stage and I'm still in the wings, I'm making all sorts of funny faces at her minutes, seconds before she goes on the stage. But then I'll come out a second later and I'm totally like in the zone. No distractions. So I can do both to an extent, but I would be careful with method acting, for it's mentioned already.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll kind of be quick because I know we've got to wrap up in a second. But yeah, I'm not against method acting, but it's not something that I would ever actually recommend.
Yeah.
If somebody asked my own opinion on it, I would say no. And which is funny because so Steve does like method acting, which is hilarious because anytime we direct together, like you guys were saying in the director's cut, he's like, we should get them method acting this week. And I'm like, you suggest that? I'll sit here. And for the same kind of reasons as you guys, I just think you have to know yourself where you're drawing the lines with it, and whether you're just doing it while you're making a cup of tea in your kitchen, or, you know, when you're in your own headspace, or when you're around people, which that does lead to complications. But I, as like an actor myself, I like to try and develop, and I've kind of had to learn how to develop for my own work, how to jump in and out of a character quickly, because I usually pick up a script like 2 weeks before I'm actually jumping into a project. So I have to be able to create a character very quickly, and I have to be able to kind of know that character very quickly, and then just go, okay, yeah, here I am, and then jump out of it again for something else. So I think it's a useful skill to have, and I think it's useful as an actor to try both, the same as you try a range of things. Okay, we have to wrap up in a second. So we were supposed to have like a 15-minute random question session. It's going to be like 2 minutes. We do have actually 2 questions. One of which was, is there going to be any more weekly challenges? I'm looking forward to them. That was sent in by Meg. So first off, I'm so glad you're enjoying the challenges, Meg. We're really enjoying them to you. And yes, there is definitely going to be more. We're going to be announcing our next one on Friday, I think it's scheduled for. And we've got at least 2 more lined up, but we'll probably have more going on. We're going to keep them going pretty much as long as lockdown is going on for. And the next prize as well is really exciting, and I cannot wait to announce it, because all the Shine Like Stars merch that we're giving is just, I love it so much. And the other question is, what's the plan for Requiem? The Requiem is our devised project, which was supposed to have started 2 weeks ago.
Oh,
You coronavirus. But we are still planning to do it. It's still going ahead. We're just going to obviously have to push it back. So originally it was being pushed back to January so that we could do our winter show first. But that is still kind of up in the air at the moment. But it's definitely going to happen. We love devised projects. And actually, one of our upcoming theatre talks, I think next week, is going to be on improvising and devising. So we'll be able to talk a lot about Requiem So Grace, who asked that question, definitely tune in for that one. But I think that is where we're going to have to leave it because we've been on for almost an hour. But there are still like 1 or 2 questions we didn't get to. I'm so sorry. We will try and answer them in the next one. On Friday, we have me and Steve and Vicky, and we're going to be talking about script writing. And again, we'll have a random question section in the last 15 minutes. We'll try to keep to time. And yeah, so tune in on Friday, 6 o'clock. And you guys, thank you so much for tuning in with me. It's been so nice to talk to you.
It's been very fun.
I'm so glad. And you'll see these guys again over the, where am I pointing? These guys.
Yes.
Next week, you guys are joining me for another theatre talk, which I don't think we've announced yet. So we'll announce it soon. But thank you guys so much for watching. If you have more questions for us, or if there's more stuff you would like to see us producing, either in theatre talks, in challenges, or in other mediums, then please do message us. We'd love to hear from you. Till next time.
Bye.